Alright, so tonight, this is my brother, Jaron. He's brought his FreeNAS Media Center. And actually what you're seeing on the projector is actually my laptop. He's only talking to FreeNAS through the network. So just through a switch here. So I'll turn it over to him and let him start talking a little bit about what FreeNAS is and what he's got set up here.
Alright. Well, FreeNAS was, I'm Jaron. I'm not a very good speaker, so bear with me. FreeNAS was based off of FreeBSD years ago, and after several years of just kind of small development on it, the IX Systems group took it over and turned it into something that's a lot better. And this is the web interface to get into it. It is, as far as NASs go, it does a lot more than just what like a NAS off the shelf would do. You can make it a media center, you can make it do Active Directory and LDAP and all that stuff. So it's not just for storing data, really. I'm going to show you how to set up, I guess, a ZFS pool on it and set it up kind of as a media server. One of the things with ZFS, you want to have at least 8 gigs of RAM. That's preferably ECC. If you don't, you'll run into a bunch of disk errors and all kinds of headaches. 64-bit CPU, and FreeNAS requires a minimum of an 8 gig boot device. Which on this one I'm using just a USB thumb drive.
Question.
Yeah.
What is FreeNAS?
It's network attached storage is what NAS stands for.
Network
attached storage.
Okay.
Here I can read you there.
This is a distro, kind of like Debian is a different distro than the others.
Okay.
Except this is based on Unix, not Linux. But it's a distro that's based on Unix.
Yeah. I'm not sure what level I'm stepping into here.
It's all over.
All right.
Hit it all.
So I installed this to an 8 gig flash drive, little thumb drive. That's what the whole OS is running off of. And we're going to set it up for something better. So for like in a network environment, if you needed just some storage, like for your users or whatever, you go to the volume manager here and you can set up I always call it tank, like it's a big tank that you can take slices out of. That creates a big pool of all your drives. I'll actually delete this and recreate it just so you can see how that goes. Maybe. How come it's chopping off the bottom here?
What's happening? Oh, it chops the side off?
I think it's chopping, there we go. I thought it was chopping the bottom off. It's gone now. I've got two 1 terabyte drives in here, just to use it as an example. We use this a lot. I run a small ISP, and we use this a lot for our virtual machines. This is the storage for all of the virtual machines, because we can use iSCSI to attach the virtual servers to them. Which I'll show you here in a minute. So once we got, this is like a bare system that just got installed now. I can do this. Once you get logged in, you go to storage. There's nothing there. You go to volume manager. It's going to say, what do you want to name it? You can do encryption if it's important stuff that you want encrypted. That'll just slow you down for like a media server or something, so I don't mess with it.
If you do encryption, will it ask for a password on boot?
I believe you can configure that to happen. but I haven't run encryption in a long time, so I'm not certain. You would know the first time you rebooted.
I tried to use encryption with it, and it asks the password at random times. It depends on whether it's attached to the volume or not. If it only, the password's only needed once when it's randomly attached to the volume.
Do you know what kind of encryption FreeNAS uses?
Let's look here. I think it gives you options.
I believe it's AES 512.
Yeah, I know it's AES. I just wasn't sure if it was 512 or not. Okay. Probably.
That seems to be standard.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, so here's the drives that I have available. It's listing 2 1 terabyte drives. If there was different, with ZFS, you don't have to have 2 of the exact same size drives unless you're wanting redundancy built in. But if you're just going to stripe across them, they can be any size and it'll mix them all together into one big drive. But we're going to set this up as a mirror. Other options are striping. Oh, it's not giving me all the options because I don't have all the disks. Other options would be RAID Z 1, RAID Z 2, RAID Z 3. What those do is add more redundancy to your RAID pool. So like a RAID Z 1, it's going to reserve the space of one drive for your parity information. RAID Z 2 has 2, RAID Z 3 has 3.
For those of you who don't know RAID Z, it's equivalent to RAID 5 in standard RAID systems, and RAID Z2 I think is the equivalent of a RAID 6. I remember rightly, it's two parity bits rather than one parity.
Correct.
So
Each RAID Z level is not very good.
Yep. Correct.
RAID 5 and RAID Z.
Very good application
I have a question.
Yep.
If you're using mirror, are you creating a mirror of the hard drive that's on that unit there?
Yeah.
Or can you go to the network and mirror a drive on another computer?
Well, that's a little more advanced way of doing things. There is a way to do that with ZFS. You can create network mirrors span the network, but through this little wizard you can't do it. So this is just talking about the drives that are in this system, so we're going to mirror them together. The 2 1 terabyte drives, we're going to mirror them together. I don't know what, I haven't ever done this actually. Yeah, it looks like you can do some other stuff there. Your mouse is sensitive.
Sorry.
Shouldn't take very long. By default, it turns on compression. You can turn it off, but it works pretty good with compression, so I usually leave it on. The only drawback is if you got a slow system, it's going to slow it down a little bit more. So once this is created, I usually set up a data set for what I'm storing. And since my example here is going to be like a media server, we're going to call it media. Here's where you can set compression levels on the separate data sets if you'd like. ZFS has built-in sharing capabilities now. You can share it like a Windows share, or Unix share, or whatever.
If you share it as a Unix share, what is that used?
It's like NFS.
NFS.
But ZFS has its own built-in sharing too between systems, so I don't really know how to show that. Okay. So we've made a data set called media. So let's say we wanted to share that or set that up to be accessed on our network. You can go here to services and under CIFS, if you wanted to do a Windows share, you can set it up right here, share work group information, all that fun stuff. You can set up the iSCSI. iSCSI works great on here now. They had an old implementation in it, but since they've updated to 9.3, it's been really stable. With iSCSI, you can basically attach storage to other network computers as if it was local to it, like a SCSI drive. I guess you could say. There's anything else here? Oh, there's Apple file sharing for those Mac users. Okay. This is also where you can set up, you know, your Active Directory, all that Windows emulation stuff.
You mentioned Apple stuff. You set it up as an Apple time machine, so Apple thinks that it's backing up to on its own.
Yes, you can. I haven't done it myself, but one of the guys that used to work for me had it set up that way and did it. So I know it's possible. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you is these plugins. This is I guess I could go through all the system settings and stuff, but really by default out of the box the thing's pretty much set up. There's a few things you may want to set up though. If you want to change the port or the IPs. I always set up the email to connect to an email server because you can enable Smart for the hard drives, and it'll email you if there's a hard drive failure so that you know you've lost a drive and you can get it replaced. Let's see, what else we got going on here? Scrubbing is how ZFS checks for errors and cleans itself up. So usually you set up a schedule for it to scrub automatically, which is by default is 35 days. More system stuff. Let's see, where is... Yeah, here. I always set up the time servers too, and which by default it uses the pool. And the time zone you want to set, obviously. And if you're setting it up as a media server, that's important because all the different media services we're going to set up kind of talk to each other, and if their time's out of sync, it messes things up. So. All right.
Am I correct in saying this? You set this up as a file server for Apple, Microsoft,
Yep.
Linux?
Yeah,
Yes.
it does pretty much
And
everything.
in the file structure, the GUI would be available from a Microsoft machine to pull a file off of?
Yeah.
Yeah, this can even act as a full Active Directory server. Without any Microsoft servers on the network, you can still run Active Directory using this.
Really?
And you would just mount it like a Windows file share. So you would know what the IP address is or the name of the server, and then just do your //, and then it would just pull up file shares, just like you would on a Windows network.
I've been editing config files this whole time.
All right, so when I install that plugin, it automatically creates a template jail system and creates a separate jail just for the transmission plugin installation. If you're not familiar with jails, in the BSD world anyway, jails are like virtual instances of the OS that only share the kernel with the host OS. So it's a whole separate OS installation. Basically, you can click on them here and I can log into it as a whole separate server.
In the Linux world, the similar thing is called containers, and in the Windows world, I don't think they've gone that far.
They've gotten that far now.
So
The nice thing in this case is if you install something like transmission, if it ever has a problem or if you want to remove it, it doesn't corrupt or it doesn't creep into the rest of your system.
Right. The idea is by isolating it too, if it gets hacked or something too, or a virus breaks out in it or whatever, it's not going to affect the main system because it can't travel through the kernel.
It's essentially sandboxing.
Yeah. So once it's created that, you can install several plugins. I'll install one more just so I can show how you can share between them.
Makes a lot of questions.
Because inherently sharing between the jails is kind of difficult.
but that's
Install
the purpose of the jail is
this.
But you can't share with
Generally, the way you share between the jails is through a network share, just like from one machine.
It, I think it was a fork from
But if
Sick
I remember,
Beard.
what he just said was, you're creating the jail and it's inside the kernel.
I can show you what it does.
It's a shared kernel, and the jail is a completely different
Actually, I can just
like
show-
OS that's using the same kernel.
That's it. So the system files are all copied to the new jail.
Right. So if anything happens in that jail, it can't affect other parts of the system that are outside of the jail. Because the kernel inherently is protected anyway. That's the idea of the kernel. So, I mean, I guess if from a jail you can install a rootkit, then maybe the rest of the
Probably
system's compromised, but that
got a
would
firewall
be
down.
I'll say the only thing you can kind of do is crash the kernel. If you
Yeah.
crash the kernel in the jail, it could crash the kernel. It's not good.
So I'll show that. But so this is my home media server, and here I've got these plugins installed.
Couch potato, Plex, Sab, Sick
So what these all do, transmission is a BitTorrent server, client, whatever. Couch Potato will search the internet for movies and download them illegally. Sick Rage is, what it does is it'll search torrents and news groups for TV show episodes and download them automatically.
Again, illegally.
So wait, the couch potato does movies, and the other one does TV shows?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So SecRage is something you wrote, or that's
No.
an application you found?
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the plugins that comes available with FreeNAS. The software itself is not illegal, but
This
what you
is-
do with it may be illegal.
This is another important difference with the license difference. In the Linux world, they're very shy when it comes to making things like this available, because there might be implied like liability
Yeah.
through the GPL, but with the FreeBSD license, no liability whatsoever applied. They're like, you take it, it's yours. So if somebody else makes this and you just happen to allow a link to it, it's no big deal. But in the Linux world, if somebody makes something like this and you put a link to it, then inherently you're kind of responsible for that link. So a lot of the Linux people won't make things like this, or they'll make it, it'll be really hard. It'll be more than just installing a plugin. Usually it'll have to be, you have to go download something from somewhere else and then install it. It won't be built in like this in Linux.
This bottom one is a news group binary downloader. And this Plex media server is media streaming, DLNA. So all the devices in my house can see this as like your televisions come preloaded with smart TVs anyway, come preloaded with a DLNA client that they can search your network and connect to media servers that are available. Like Microsoft, if you had a computer turned on and you wanted to stream a movie from it to your TV, the DLNA would handle that. But this does that, and it also connects to all my phones and computers everywhere. Anywhere in the world I can log in here. Each one of these plugins is in a jail now. And they'll show up over here under jails. So you can go and add storage to each one, and there's the media data set that I added earlier. So you add that to each of your plugins so that they can all access the same storage pool, same data set, which inherently insecures your jail. Just so you know, but we don't care on our own internal system, right?
That's a sacrifice you make with the media center.
Right. You have to share your media pool, or the jails don't see it. And right here you can see on mine that all the jails have their own data set. If you're going to use FreeNAS for iSCSI, you cannot use data sets really. It lets you try, but it doesn't work very well. You have to use what's called zvols, which is, oops, wrong button. A zvol is basically takes and makes a section of your tank set aside as a block device. So it sees it as a hard drive, an actual physical piece of hardware almost. You have to set aside a size for it, or it doesn't dynamically grow like the data sets do. Data sets will dynamically shrink and grow depending on what data is in each data set. But a zvol is static. Once you set the size, that's what it is. With ZFS, you also have snapshots. Snapshots are kind of like, what's that Apple one you just mentioned?
Time Machine.
Time Machine, they're kind of like that. They take a snapshot of the data set that you tell it to, or subset. You can define all the way down to a directory, I think. I can't remember. I usually just do the top level and the data sets. And it'll create a snapshot in time. And if you need to, if you delete some files and you need to restore, you can do it. It'll rebuild it based on the checksums and differences.
We talked about snapshots in the last meeting.
You did?
Because we talked about file systems and
On how to basically just take a snapshot of your data and come back to it later.
Right. So on the NASs we have in our network at Sumner, I have the snapshots set up to automatically recycle themselves, delete the old ones. It keeps about, I think it's 3 days worth. And then that is set up to replicate over to another server, and it'll take that whole data set based on the snapshot and replicate it over to another NAS, so that in the event of a catastrophe with this one, I can point the virtual machines over to that other NAS real quick and they'll be back up and running. Depending on what virtual software you're using, you can actually tell the remote NAS to mount the file systems, and then you could actually point your virtual machine at both, and then that way it's redundant, but that's a lot more work. It's failover redundant. I mean, it's high availability redundant. Here's where you can set up your scrubs to check the file system every so often. Here's where you set up your snapshots on a schedule. I don't know what this does. This is new.
It's a snapshot of the special files that can load straight into
VMware, so you can run it as a, yeah.
It just changes the snapshot to their format.
There's lots of other things in here. I don't know what else to show you. Reporting builds graphs based on your CPU load, system load, memory load, disk usage, network usage.
Those are pretty graphs.
Yeah, it uses MRTG. Why isn't this working?
Is that a scroll on the mouse?
Oh, there we go. There's my disk disk IO.
There's a two-finger scroll.
Memory. My network got to be colorful. See, it's downloading something right now. ZFS size.
I noticed that when ZFS starts running, it's like almost 100% all the time.
Yeah.
It just balls the walls as much as it can do. It's slowly just says the only memory you can't use, and it's just like, do that.
So, I don't know. Anybody got any questions? Otherwise, I'm not sure what else to show you. Unless we get into details on setting up plugins or something, but
No, but go back to the plugins list and just look at some of the other plugins.
Yeah.
See what we got there.
And also maybe show the services that this can do.
okay. Well, let's do services first.
Yeah, services.
Well, I went through some of those. Your Apple file, CIFS is
Windows
like
share.
Samba. It is Samba.
We pull up the config for domain controller.
Yeah.
Wrench.
Here you go.
So this is where you would set up your Active Directory. If you were going to use this as an Active Directory server.
And that's the role right there. You can actually, you can be a domain controller. It can also be a slave to it. Because it's probably not associated with anything yet, it might be set up as a slave.
I thought maybe that would tell us something, but it's not.
You probably have to fill in some other stuff first.
Yeah, I don't want to set it up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
We can do it on the other one if you want.
Anyway, that's where. That's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need to set it up. I just wanted to show them where it was.
Well, if you do the media server, this is one that might be useful.
Yeah.
Dynamic DNS, what it does is you have to have a dynamic DNS account with one of these providers. And then it'll take and talk to that server and that DNS server and give it the IP of its location, my IP in this example, and associate whatever name you want with it. So I could make an easy name to remember, like my NAS or something.
Yeah, if you can't afford a static IP or if it's just not available to you, then you can do this, and then if your IP ever changes due to your network provider, or resetting things, or after a couple of days it just cycles or something, it'll update a domain name for you. So if you own a domain, you don't have to worry
So you
about
could create a mail server pretty easily.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's nice with the jails in this. Even though FreeNAS, it's just the NAS software. It's based on BSD. If you go into jails, you can actually install the entire BSD OS from an image. You can set up a web server on it, whatever you wanted, mail server.
Isn't Apache and all that in a plugin otherwise?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get to here.
Also, this FreeNAS, what version of BSD is running?
Right now, 9.3.
Oh.
They follow the same numbering scheme as the FreeBSD.
So they're not past 10 yet.
See right there. It's their current version. You can go get that, their development version. So this is their stable version right now.
Have you done anything with their development version?
No, I haven't messed with it. But I heard there's some cool stuff coming in it.
I
So
wonder if the Beehive stuff's in there.
That'd be cool.
I think that might be why they're waiting on release.
They gotta be
Someone
working
told
on
me
it,
so.
yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Because, I mean, as it is right now, it works great for you, for Unix and Linux.
This would
Most
be-
Linuxes.
This would be a nice interface for everybody.
It'd be a very nice interface. And it's in hospital.
You can set up your storage and all your everything. Yeah, it's kind of stalled out. It's definitely
Yeah.
536.
I don't think it's going to show me what I wanted either. Let me do this again. I didn't break it.
Yeah. Now it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Oh no, there we go. That's what's up for.
What's a VirtualBox 10 to that?
Well, that's actually something they changed around and just added in there that you can set up a VirtualBox jail and then you can install OSs in it and remotely attach to them using like what's that, VNC or something like that.
So it's just a jail pre-configured for VirtualBox?
Mhm.
That's a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah.
To run VirtualBox in a jail.
Yep.
I'm impressed.
It's kind of cool though.
That's an incredible.
What
So you
kind
can
of
set up-
operating system?
What's that?
What kind of operating?
Any.
Yeah,
I've
VirtualBox
used
runs
it
almost
for
anything.
Huh?
Yep. VirtualBox is
It's like
a
a
virtual machine, but it's not as efficient as a hypervisor.
Yeah.
It's kind of clunky, so you can't do high graphics and high processor intensive things.
But it's a very quick way to run anything.
if you needed a Windows desktop, for example, if all you had was a bunch of Unix machines laying around, you wanted a Windows desktop to do stuff from, you could set up a VirtualBox with Windows 95 in it or whatever, and connect to it and use it from there.
On my laptop, I have Linux, but I had a class that required Windows, so I just did it in VirtualBox. And when I go into class, I could just open up VirtualBox, and it would boot Windows and run, and that was good enough for the class. It was kind of slow, but
Yeah, you wouldn't want to play video games or watch
Yeah,
videos.
it doesn't play very well.
There used to be other templates in here, that's what I was going to show, but I think you can go download them now. They took them out of the base, so you have to go get them. Here they are. But they're not, none of them are pre-configured, but I think you can go get some and import them here. But there used to be some for, like, if you had you wanted a web server, it would download a pre-configured web server with the OS and everything, set up the jail, and it'd be up and running. There are a lot you can do with the jails. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it just created this, and that'll be the full FreeBSD install. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh well. And now it's all the way up there. There. So it's, you know, you can set up a server to do whatever then.
What's
in
that
instance?
You named that shade?
I just default. Okay. So what else were we open to show? Services. Went through all that. There's FTP server if you wanted an NFS server, rsync.
what's LLDP? I feel like I should know it.
Yeah, me too. I don't remember.
Country code.
Yeah, it's weird.
That is weird.
It's I forget what it's for. Google it.
I think it is a location service.
Probably. TFTP, I use that a lot for loading firmware on switches and routers.
Discovery protocol.
WebDAV. UPS is nice. It'll, if you have a UPS hooked up to it, you can hook up a serial port and it'll email you if power goes out so you know what's going on. It'll tell you how much battery's left, all that stuff.
It's just Discovery. LUP was Discovery.
It's the open
Yeah.
version of CD or CCD.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I knew that.
That's what Microsoft uses.
Yeah. So what do you want to see here? There's, if you go to their forums, there's a ton of plugins people have just written and posted on the forums. So that's why there's this upload. You can download their custom written plugin for whatever and upload it here and it'll install it for you.
That's cool. 9OS.
Yeah, it'll create Minecraft servers for you and you can manage them with a web interface.
I saw one like that one time. I don't know if that's it, but I saw a plugin like that for Minecraft, not for FreeNAS, but you can make your own. It was like a web thing, and it was a web manager for it, but it also allowed you to like open up a map of the world. But it was like a three-dimensional map that was generated from the files of the world, but you could like look around in it and see where things were without being in the game, and you could see through things, and it was like shady. It is cool.
SickBeard does the same thing as SickRage, except that SickBeard will only search news groups. It won't do torrents.
How much stuff still comes from news groups?
A lot.
It's harder to get to though.
Yeah. It's a little more old school, I guess.
Does Firefly do free iTunes stuff or
What's that?
Firefly?
I think it just sets it up as a media server for those
Oh, okay.
devices.
I see.
So you can sync your iPad or
Oh,
iPod
okay.
to your.
Headphones will do music. I played with it. I don't have it installed right now. There's other.
Is there a setting in headphones that you can just tell it to download everything?
Like the
All
whole all music.
All of it?
I don't know.
Does this have a like a music?
This is cool too. The Crucible.
Does this have a music front end for playing music files, music library?
Plex will
Plex will do music.
Yeah. There's other.
Do you-
That MB right there. It's a lot like Plex. It's more open source though.
How does Crucible work? How can you clone a computer over the web?
It's like Ghost or whatever.
Yeah, but what do you boot? From the machine that you're cloning?
Web-based computer cloning.
Because if you're
Maybe
in the
I
OS
don't
and you
know.
clone it, it can't clone everything.
I haven't used the web one. I don't know.
Interesting.
Maybe that's.
Go install it and find out.
Might have to.
Maybe it's just a file copy though. Just-
Maybe it's just a file copy.
What else do you want to know?
Does anyone else have any questions?
OwnCloud is on there. That's nice. OwnCloud is like an open source version of Dropbox.
Yep.
You can run your own Dropbox server.
It does more than just Dropbox. It does more than files. You can set up apps in it and things like that.
Get it out.
Well, cool.
Yeah, I guess that's about all I got. Without digging in deep.
The installation for FreeNAS is pretty straightforward too.
Yeah, I did it ahead of time to save time because I thought this would take a lot longer to go through. The installation, I just threw the USB in there, booted off of the CD image. It does itself. You just answer like 3 questions. Then you got your web interface once you got an IP.
So it's like a server type of
It's
thing?
yeah, it's strictly a server.
Okay.
Sure. Also the front end. And because it's running ZFS, there's unlimited hard drive space.
Yeah.
It's as
The
big as,
limit is your money.
yeah, it's as big as your pocketbook can go.
I think I have on mine. Let's see. Is this mine still? Yeah.
Ubuntu is going to go
12 terabytes in
fully
there.
optional for ZFS.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do. Did anybody
BSD
miss?
did that years ago.
Did anybody else miss the article where Apple is gonna is dropping VMware for KVM?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
I saw that.
really?
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Actually, ZFS came from Solaris.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Slow-eris, as I call it. Anything else?
any questions?
Any questions?
Any other parts you guys want to see while we're in there? Cool. Thank you for coming.